Konnichiwa, everyone. This is Andrew, the Japan financial guy, and today I just attended a annual conference, the first one of hopefully many to come, by Retire Japan. Now, Retire Japan is a great resource online that has a forum for learning about different personal financing, how to do it in Japan, how to invest. That has information about, the banks in Japan, information about visas, and it really just helps you to prepare for your retirement, whether you're going to stay here in Japan forever or just for a short time. And hey, here at the Japan Financial Guy channel, we are all about that. Just having a more secure and invested start here now will prepare you for when you retire so that you don't have $0 in your savings account. Okay, well, this conference, it was, they did a few in-person type events before, they said, but this was the first time they've done it online, and it went really well. It was 4 hours long with 4 different speakers. They had a Q&A session as well at the end, so I think a total of about 5 hours. Now, of course, we're not going to go over the entire thing here in 5 hours, but I want to give a recap, just as someone who's been living in Japan for a while, that I myself didn't feel like I really dove into this personal finance here in Japan in the time that I've been here, just because the information is hard to get to. And finding Retire Japan, for me, just about a year and a half ago, it's really opened my eyes to what kind of information is out there in English. So let's get into it. So the guy behind the curtain of Retire Japan is Ben Tanaka. He lives in Sendai, and he opened up with the first speaking session for about 30 minutes, and they took questions after that. And that was the format for most of the speakers. He said, the worst thing that you could do is to just do nothing, to not prepare for retirement by doing nothing. And so there's a couple different approaches that he went over that says that it could get you in a good situation or a bad situation, but overall, doing nothing is probably the worst thing you could do. Even if you're taking if you're doing the wrong thing, it could still have suboptimal results. Now, going on, and he went on to say, where are you in your financial journey? Everyone's in a different place. Everyone's from a different country. And so everyone's route that they may want to take is different, but there's a lot of things that we can do economically to get to that financial independence, or just a healthy retirement when we do retire. Because maybe not everyone needs financial independence, is what he was saying. You don't have to quit your job and be a millionaire. Of course, that's not a bad thing, but you just want to be able to prepare for your future. So the first thing to do, he listed 7 stages to this financial independence, and the first thing is just to wake up. He explained it like the movie The Matrix, just realize, okay, you are in this world, and you need to understand that from here on out, you need to build basic habits to save and invest, and from there on, get an emergency fund, and then after accumulating, different diversified investments, whether that's real estate, stocks, bonds, you can have more of a healthy savings and investments that you could live off of one day. And those investments, might last you 3 to 6 months, might last you a few years. Eventually, you get to the point where you think that those investments will last you 20 years or more. You can maybe cut back on your work, and you can retire early. Now, if you don't think or plan to retire early, that's okay. But these things will definitely help you when you get to that point to wanting to retire, no matter where you are in the stage of life right now, whether you're in your 20s or your 40s or 50s. Okay, so he mentioned also income streams. Is it okay to have one or multiple? Of course, the more diversified you are, he mentioned that you are going to have more safety. If you lose your job tomorrow, do you have other income coming in that's going to help support you? most of us, I know for me, myself, if I lost my main job, then I would have to go find a new job immediately, and things could be a little hairy if I didn't have other income streams coming in. So he talked about different types of income streams. Could be, of course, from stocks and bonds, from which it's not necessarily income, but it's preparing, for your retirement, but it also could be used in emergency situations. Real estate income. Maybe you want to create a digital product. You didn't get too deep into what these income streams are, but that it's good to think about that. Spending, and he didn't go too deep on this, but he did say, one of the most important things is to be mindful of our spending, and to also think about saving as well. And you don't have to never do anything fun. You don't have to cut back on everything that you enjoy in life, but do look at the big things, like some of the housing that we live in, the car that we might drive, some of these expensive areas like buying a new cell phone every year when the new iPhone comes out. Like, these are the kind of things that maybe would cut into how much we can save. So it is an opportunity cost, as he said, and so you have to think about how we look at what you're saving and you're investing as an opportunity to have even more potential enjoyment in life and be able to spend even more later in life. So the years to financial independence, he shows this chart here, and it shows the savings rate versus the years until you can retire. So if you are only saving 5% of your income, for example, it could take many, many years to be able to have enough money built up to be able to retire. And we're not talking about pensions or anything else like Social Security right now, but just being able to save, 20, 30, 40, or you look at the chart, 70% of your income. If you're able to live on the amount that you're spending with that savings rate, you may be able to retire a lot sooner. So there are some crazy extreme amounts that some people do save to be able to retire early, and it's not for everyone. It's not for most people, but it is good to know how the math works. So the savings rate versus income, even if you're making less money, you can still be able to retire early. And he gave an example here with Carla and Mike, and you can see that Carla is making a lot more money but saving only 20%, where Mike is making $3 million a year, which is much less, more than 3 times less, but he's saving 50% a year, and he was able to retire sooner than Carla, living off of the amount that he's spending each year, which would be significantly less than what Carla is spending. Okay, well, as time goes on, for example, I just am in a new apartment right now, and it has a great view. There's a factor that as I am getting used to where I'm living, that view, it's going to still always be beautiful, but I'm going to get used to it. And so the same goes with, a really expensive new condo or a new house or a new car. It's going to be wonderful, but eventually you're going to get used to those things. And it's not to say that you can't have these nice things eventually, but again, in the beginning, with the way compound interest works, it is much better to do that savings in the beginning. Now, even if it's just a little bit, and to use a little bit of delayed gratification later in life. So Ben Tanaka gave an example of saving 30% of your income, which could be a lot of money for people watching this video. But yeah, it's a good idea to start with a small amount, and if you can get up to that 30%, that is a great amount to be saving. So yes, the main theme here is to do it now, and he says a lot of things that scared people away, and don't want to invest, is that it seems like it's gambling, or that it's just too difficult, or it takes a lot of time, and that is the image, and it can be like that but it can also be very simple. Investing your money in a world index fund or a U.S. market index fund can be something that's very simple, that just takes a tiny little time to research and set up, and you can have it be even automatic to where that it's coming out of your bank account each month, that the same time that your salary is coming out. And so it's not something that has to be extremely difficult and can be very hands-off and stress-free. And over time, these type of funds, 20, 30, 40 years from now, at least from what we've seen over the past 100 years, they've always produced more money, anywhere from 7 to 12% per year on average. And that's much better than letting your money sit in a bank account, just in a savings account, where you're getting almost no return. Because we see each year the inflation rates, sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower, but the inflation rates is making that money that we're saving value be less, which is why we need to do these things like investments to prepare for our future, to prepare for retirement. So yes, very good points here by this first speech by the founder of Retire Japan, Ben Tanaka. He talks about, how to get advice and just many different factors of diversifying, keeping, the diversification of your investments very broad will give you more safety net, and to know that, there's different ways you can do these things, whether that's stocks, bonds, ETFs, index funds, or real estate. And so a lot of good resources here. In Japan, a lot of this information of how to do this is all in Japanese. And so sites like Retire Japan and some of these other speakers today who are giving other options in English will really help us clarify how we can go about living our life here in Japan and preparing for our future. So in Japan, we had it's different than, I'm from the US, it's different than in the States where, investing, it's still not super popular for everyone, but it doesn't have a horrible image perhaps. But where in Japan, after the bubble in the 90s that crashed, it doesn't, the stock market and everything in Japan, the investments haven't completely recovered since that time. We are on the uptrend right now, but it's not as golden and as good looking as maybe things in other countries. And so a lot of the image of investments here in Japan is more dealing with the mafia and having these bad investments. They have TV programs like this that show the Yakuza, making dirty investment deals and things like that. I'm not familiar with this TV program specifically, but it was brought up. And so, a lot of families here in Japan are just sitting in cash because, with inflation not being as high here in Japan, it could seem like maybe it's not as such a bad choice. But as an American, we have to do special reporting over here in Japan, or any country that we're living in that doesn't allow us to take advantage of some of these tax-free accounts, retirement accounts like the NISA and the DECO, which I would highly recommend if you're not American. But yes, there are other ways to go about doing this that he goes into in the question and answer section about using interactive brokers, which is a trading firm that is also here in Japan that really helps foreign residents, but or you can use an account that you'd set up back home. But yes, just going through many of these great options. I really, talking about the different types of taxes and tax breaks, talking about Nenkin, which is your Social Security here in Japan, and if you've contributed to Social Security in Japan for more than 10 years, you can take it with you, you can receive it no matter where you go around the world. Now, if you contribute for less than 10 years too, it's okay because you can get a refund based on the amount that you contributed. And so really don't see anything wrong with, as Ben also mentioned, contributing to your Social Security here while living in Japan. Even if I found out, I was exempt from my Social Security for the first year or two, and so I didn't have to pay into it. And then after a while, I started paying into it. But I lived 10 years in Japan, and even with those exemptions, it counted towards those 10 years. So if you've been exempt from having to pay this Social Security, it's still a good thing. And if you weren't exempt and you want to pay back on those years you missed, that's also an option as well. So last, for Ben Tanaka's presentation here, he talks about the 10 steps to win life. And those steps were pretty cool. Just basically, to wake up and realize that if you don't start soon, that, just letting time go by is only hurting, because everything compounds exponentially in these investments as you do them. And to just to wake up, to spend wisely, to pay off the high percentage debts you may have. If you have high percentage credit card debt, it might not be a good time to start investing if the percentage that you're having to pay for the interest for that credit card is 15%, for example. You have an emergency fund. So if you were to lose your job, you would have 2 to 3 months or 6 months or a year in savings, so that you could find a way to make ends meet. And then to go ahead and max out the IDECO and NISA if you're not American, and other taxable accounts. And then lastly, to keep doing that and prepare for retirement. And then when you get to that comfortable stage, pay it forward, share this information with other people to help other people fund their tax-free accounts, like maybe a NISA Junior account for your kids, or a NISA Junior account for your relatives' kids or some friend. Yeah, just to do these things and to get more people aware of personal finance, even though they're living overseas here in Japan, that it's very possible. So really, just a great introductory speech to start off the conference by Ben Tanaka. So going to look at the next speaker, we had Retirewiki. It's Retirewiki.jp, and I'm going to get his name. Oh, I didn't write his name down. I'm so sorry. I think it's Adam. And Adam, he went ahead and made this site that looks a lot like Wikipedia, because he used some of the same software that helped him build this website. He's a very, very smart guy as far as building systems, and he really needed more English language knowledge about how to be a long-term resident in Japan and how to prepare for retirement in Japan. And so he made this wiki that's just super helpful. There it is, yes, Adam Millerchip. So you can check him out on Twitter. And he's been in Japan since 2014. And just in this short amount of time, 7 years, he has been able to make this amazing site. And the cool thing about this site is he didn't have to do everything himself. It's made so that volunteers can come and contribute information to the site, and he can, of course, manage that information and check that information to make sure that it's accurate. But it goes anywhere from talking about savings and investments, some of the things that we just talked about in Ben's presentation, and taxes, administrative and legal, insurance, guides for people who are from the UK and the US, which is extremely helpful. And I just, it's a community that you can register for if you want to help contribute information to the English-speaking community. And just having something like this, it's really, I find it really helpful for me when I'm trying to look up something for Social Security real quickly, or I'm trying to look up something about visas. He went into, in his presentation today, he talked about permanent visas, and I went through that process. And I was married, I still am, I'm married to a Japanese citizen, and I didn't know that, you only need to be married for 3 years, and if you were married overseas and you came to Japan, you only need to be in Japan for 1 year to get that permanent residence visa. Whereas the main thing that most people are aware of is you need to be in Japan 10 years if you're not married to a Japanese citizen. But that's the only one that I knew about. And so, a couple years back, I was able to get that permanent residence. And so he talks about how the skilled workers can can get a permanent residence as well. There's just different ways to get visas on here, as well as how to prepare for your taxes and what kind of insurance is good in Japan as well. So just a lot of good information from Adam, and I encourage you to go ahead and check out his wiki. And there's just a huge bank of information that you can learn from. And who knows, maybe in the future, myself or you would love to contribute to it and to make it easier for people living in Japan. Just going on to the next speaker, I met Daniel Mills here, who talks about real estate investing in the USA. I met him not in person, but through his Facebook group that he helps host, called Investing in Japan. And they just a small little community of 40 to 50 people at the time I joined, I believe. And yes, just learning so much from some of their posts there. But his big thing that he's been doing for the past 10 to 15, I think 15 years, is he came over to Japan with lots of university debt. He got married after coming here and started getting his master's and doctorate. But then he started to, purchase his own primary residence. But after that, he was able to invest in real estate in the States, starting with single-family homes. And after investing in single-family homes, he was, getting these quite a bit of appreciation. He was getting quite a bit of cash flow, and he was realizing that depending on the area, he was getting better appreciation or better cash flow. So he really had to do his research ahead of time, and he had to get help from a team. And so he talks about how if you want to invest in the U.S. real estate, he's a U.S. citizen with dual citizenship, I believe, in the U.K., but he talks about how to make that team and to look for those kind of places that provide good cash flow and provide good appreciation. And I'll talk about Japanese real estate by a speaker today named Ziv. He talks about Japanese real estate and what's different about it than the U.S. But the U.S., there's been some great appreciation recently the past 10 years, and the cash flow is pretty good as well. So he eventually talked about commercial properties and syndications, and how, if you don't have enough money to do it yourself, like you could get involved in a syndication, and the starting amount is a little bit higher than I expected. This is good to know up front, but it might be $50,000 to start investing in syndication, but you can have a very hands-off passive approach where you're just an investor, and you might be almost guaranteed, if there's something goes wrong, it might not happen, but you could have 9% year-over-year investments return from this syndication for these huge multifamily units. When the person who organized the syndication, if they decide to sell the property, you would get a large investment return on that as well. And so, yeah, I didn't know much about syndications, so this was really helpful. Again, I just want to say you can see these Retire Japan conference speakers and their presentations on the Retire Japan blog, which again, the Retire Japan blog is extremely helpful. They have a weekly newsletter, which I'm signed up to, and I would highly recommend signing up if you have not, but check them out. So again, Daniel just talking about these different options, and why he chose the USA was because as a U.S. citizen, he's able to do the financing pretty easily. The cash flow and the appreciation is really good, and there's also tax benefits by having real estate in the States. And he said it's changing recently to be not as good as it used to be, but he's able to buy real estate and just hold on to it and get this constant monthly cash flow coming in. So there's different strategies. He's a buy and hold kind of guy, but you could flip houses. You could have just short-term rental properties or Airbnb type rental properties. You could furnish them. You can do these syndications. But as far as his experiences, it was over the buy and hold approach. Now, flipping houses, that takes a lot of hands-on maintenance, a lot of work, a lot of people involved in making that a successful flip. And so he was telling us about some of the good and the bad things about flipping houses. But for him, buying and holding, it seemed like less stress. And it was kind of neat to tell you how he went ahead and got into this. He would have to identify and analyze the property. He would have to understand the area. He would have to understand the population of the area, the crime rate. He would talk about, what kind of different things related to the laws, the taxes. Was it a walkable place that you can get around town easy? Does it have convenience? So he would look into these things to make sure that the area that he's investing into a property has the potential to appreciate. Now, he gave a really good example here. I'll show a picture of one of his properties that he brought in, it was a $220,000 property, and it brought in about $2,000 plus in rent a month, but they're paying out $1,500 in expenses. Now, that could be the principal, they have to pay on the loan, the interest on that loan, other fees as well, the time that it was vacant, things like that. And that, approximately gave him a $600 a month cash flow on that property, and a 11.6% cash on cash. So if you think about the $60,000 amount he had to make as a down payment, and then the cash that was coming back. So if you take that percentage, 11%, you're looking at getting your money back in about 8 to 9 years, I would say, on that investment. Plus, he got a 40% appreciation in the first year that he bought it. Now, again, that is not normal. Most of the time, you just hope for 3 to 4% appreciation to beat inflation. But yeah, things like that can be, if we're in a real good market, that is a potential as well. So you have to be able to finance the property, he was saying, and he talked also about managing and optimizing your portfolio, all the things that go into just making sure everything is running smoothly. And I think one of the biggest things, that we might be concerned about is there going to be a fire and if the house burns down, I'm going to have a bad tenant. And he actually said he experienced some of those things. But as he got going and his portfolio got bigger, it didn't hurt him as bad if one of his properties, which he did say one of his properties burnt down. But he had he had building and fire insurance. And so it wasn't quite as bad as it could have been. And he had a tenant that wouldn't leave. But again, with the diversified portfolio, it wasn't as bad for his situation. So I thought this was a pretty cool presentation from Daniel, and just props out to you, Daniel, for watching this. It's really, I haven't gotten into investment side of real estate myself, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while. And the more I think about it, the less that I do it. You see the appreciation is going crazy recently in the U.S. But yeah, let's take a look at Ziv's presentation talking about real estate in Japan, as it could be something I'm interested as well, as we are seeing the economy in Japan improve. So the last speaker for the conference, his name is Ziv, and he's from Israel originally, I believe, and his company is called Nippon International Tradings, nippontradings.com, and they help investors from overseas as well as local investors look at holiday homes or investment properties here in Japan, apartments, commercial as well. And he talked about some of the pros and cons of investing in Japan. And so we just talked about the U.S., and yes, it's in a great market there in the U.S. now. It might crash. We don't know. But here in Japan, things are a little more, I wouldn't say, they're more stable. And Ziv did a good job to point out how they're, his goal is to look for affordable, high-yielding, and hassle-free places for his clients. And so Japan is more, if you're investing in real estate, Japan, it's more about getting that cash flow coming in. You don't see as much appreciation, he was saying. So it's not very speculative in certain areas. Like in the States, you might be looking for an area that's just going to blow up and be the next big thing in the States or wherever country you're from. But in Japan, basically areas stay pretty stable. So, there's different types of investments, condo units, which have their different fees he's talking about. The fees for renovation, the fees for the management of the building, and the taxes on it as well. Then you have housing units and apartments, and commercial as well. Now, he focused a lot on apartments because single resident apartments are just so popular in Japan. And that's a lot of the things that I think their business is in. So, being in Japan, there's a lot of different things about Japan here. Foreign residents aren't very common. And they're scary. So if you wanted to rent out to foreign residents, they might be able to bring in a lot more income for you as well. With Japanese tenants, they're very reliable. They are almost always, you'll never have a problem with them paying their rent. You won't have squatters. You won't have people just fleeing. And so that's one of the benefits about investing in Japan. Now, as to some of the rates that we were showing here in the U.S. just recently, but in Japan, you might see anywhere from, he was saying, pre-tax 7 to 8% return on your apartment or on your investment properties here in Japan, which isn't bad at all, especially if you know that the tenants are always going to be reliable. So you don't have to be as speculative, and you know that that you can rely on that. Now, one of the things about Japan that's different from the States is there are no rent hikes. They don't even know what a rent hike is. So if you get into a property and you live there, the rent by the landlord usually isn't raised. They don't hike the rent. So someone who lived in an apartment maybe from the bubble in the 90s might be paying a crazy high amount than someone who lived 5 years later. But they're living in the same property and they're paying different rents. So that isn't fair, it sounds like, but if you want to keep your rent price, you just get in early before the area expands and your rent price is going to stay low. So that's something to think about if you're wanting to invest in a property here in Japan. He was talking about areas like Tokyo and Osaka, which are extremely expensive. After COVID, they went down a little bit. But right now, his company specifically is looking at some of the areas outside of Tokyo, like Chiba and Yokohama, Nagoya, Fukuoka. I'm here in Hiroshima, and he didn't mention Hiroshima specifically, but some of these other areas are great places, perhaps, to invest, to where you see a lot of people coming to the city and really trying to, it's not overpriced, and a lot of people are still coming to the city. Because one of the big things about Japan is the depopulation. And I want to talk about this in a separate video, but depopulation in Japan, yes, it is happening. But a lot of people are coming from the outside cities to the big city. And actually, as people do that, you're seeing a higher increase of GDP. The gross domestic product, or the prefectural spending, is increasing. And that's pretty insane to see a slight decrease into population, but spending going up. And so I think a lot of this has to do with people moving to the big cities, and that's a good thing for real estate. It's a good thing for the economy, even though they're seeing that depopulation. So yeah, the financing in Japan works differently, and Ziv went over this. If you're going to get a loan in Japan, it really helps to be a permanent resident, but it's not impossible. If you have a spouse, for example, that is a citizen, or a business partner that is a citizen, or you have a lot of cash, there's some different ways that you can get a loan in Japan. He was going over that would work out if you're wanting to invest in Japanese real estate. Yeah, I was just really satisfied with how the conference went. There will be hopefully many more to come. And I know there's a small percentage of the foreign residents living in Japan that probably know about this. So share this information with someone. Get this information out there, and let's help each other out so that we can really plan for our future, whether we're here in Japan or somewhere else. Thanks so much, guys. I just love that you're here, and I really appreciate all the support. You can find me on Twitter at JPN Financial Guy, and hopefully I'll have an Instagram up soon as well. Just love to be on this journey with you together.